Yep. So our project for today, it will be just get user. Now, as you can see, if I go to my DevTools and I go to network and I refresh my page. So by default here, when my page is being reloaded or refreshed, I will send a request to get a user with ID 1, as you can see. And then I will show his data. Also, if you notice that the previous button here, it should be disabled. Why? Because simply, I mean, the user I have, their ID start with 1, and I cannot have a user with ID 0. That's the reason why this button is disabled. But now if I click on next, what it's going to do here is going to send another request to get the user with ID 1 plus 1, that means it will be 2, next user, and voila, as you can see. And of course, after that, the previous button also, it will be active. And now here I can, if I want to click on it, it will give me back my user 1. Click, and voila, that's my user 1. Next, 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 next. So you can go to previous, you can go to next, so whenever you want to, until I get user with ID 10, whenever I try to send a request or show a user with ID 10, now the next button, it will be disabled. Why? Because simply, I don't have a user with ID 11. And now I'll try to work on this functionality of this project. It's quite similar to the project of yesterday, so nothing new, it's just this, but we need to handle them depending on the ID, you need to disable them or enable them.
Samir, can we update our last project, or do we need to create new one?
No, they're different because the last project we're trying to get all users. This one here, we're trying just to get one user.
Okay.
There's difference. Fine. So I've already have my project and I built it. Let me go to package.json. Now, guys, you need to understand something. I did explain this point, I don't know how many times, and still you're asking me the same question again and again and again. That means you did not understand it. You need to understand what's the difference between dependency and div dependency. So div dependency, I need them during the development. Okay, dependency, I need them during the production. When I push my code to production, I will need these packages first. Second, whenever you are using any library, you need to make sure it does exist either in dependency or div dependency, depending on your need. So if I need it during the development, I need to put it here. And as a way to install any package as a div dependency, it's super simple. All I have to do just npm I minus the capital, and then I can install what I want to, for example, prettier here. Now, if I want to install anything as a dependency, I just npm I as the name of the package. So there is no, it's not difficult really. Now, as a type of React, this one here is installed by default using, so Vite installs these packages. They are, of course, used for ESLint here, prettier Vite, Vite is our server. React types here, if I want to define React, also type React DOM, that's help us to define a different type. So prop type here, for example, it's coming from these packages here. But let's say I have a package which is called React icon. You need to check first your package.json. Do you have React icon? Well, if you don't have it, you cannot use it. And it doesn't make sense. Now you need to install it. And when you want to install it, you need to think of it. Okay, do I need it as a dependency or div dependency? That means, do I need it all the time, even when I push my code to production? Yes. So now here I need to install it as a dependency. So all I have to do, well, let's say I don't know how to install React icon. I mean, it's super simple, really. All you have to do, just say React-icon, npm, and voila. I mean, you are not creating a rocket. And it will show you here the documentation with the examples, how to install it. And all you have to do, just copy these commands, that's it. And as you can see, how can you use it? It shows you a lot of examples. And it's quite simple. Again, all the time, you need to check if you have the dependencies, the packages or not. If you don't have a package in your package.json, you are not allowed to use it. If you use it, of course, it will give you an error. That's first. Second, for Git, I mean, you've been studying Git for 6 months. I mean, you shouldn't really ask question about Git. Now, the point when you are asking a question, that means you don't understand how to do or how to deal with the basic of Git. For example, let's say I have a problem with the remote URL and I don't know how to remove it, for example. All you have to do just do simple search. How can I remove the remote URL from my Git project? And voila, and you have million command here. So you need just to think a little bit. That's all you need. You need to be able to solve your problem by yourself because, I mean, that's your job as a developer. If you cannot solve your problem, I mean, that means you're not developer and you will not learn anything. Fine. Let's go now to this guy here and try now to remove this, the code exists here. First, of course, I have an API to get one user, so I'm gonna delete it. Component, I have few component, I have header, I'm gonna get rid of it. I'm not gonna delete the CSS because simply, yeah. Here's a loading, and my loading is nothing actually. It's just two div with styling. That's it. So I shouldn't do that. I've shared the loading component with you already. You can use it all the time, or if you want to, you can try to modify it according to your need. Now for the user here, as you can see, I'm just trying to get the user data, which will be an object with a lot of property, as you can see. What I need to do here, I need just to get rid of this one. Then I have something called user container. That will be the most important component in my project. And after that, I just have app. So let's get rid of these two. Let's get rid of this one. And now let's just type hello world, for example. Click. Yeah, that's all I need. Now, if I go to the project, as you can see, I have hello world and yeah. So the first step I need to do here, I need to understand what is my project doing? What do I want to do? Well, I want to send a request to get a user with ID. And of course, to do that, I will need an API anyway. So let me go to my API and try to create it. I will create a new folder, APIs. I go to get user. And here, notice it's get user, it's single user. That means I will need an ID. So I can just simply const get user. And of course, it will be a sync function. And I just need the ID here. Voila. Now I need to export it because I'm planning to use it in another file. I need to use try and catch block as we normally do. If I have an error, I just want to log this error. Voila. And here simply I can just say const response, it's equal to await fetch. And here, of course, I will just pass my URL /ID here, as you can see. And I'm using backtick. Why? Because I want to render the ID dynamically. After that, I need to check if the response.ok. If it's not okay, I need to throw an error. Else, I need to parse my data and return my data. So here I can just say if not res.ok. If it's not okay, I just need to throw an error. And of course, to throw an error here, I need to delete this one. I can also make a backtick. And here I can just say HTTP error with status, and I can type the status. Status is super important property. It helps us to know what's the problem. Is it a server error? Is it a client error? So yeah. And after that, if that's okay, so what I can do here, I can just say const. I'm trying to fetch a user, so I will name it user, and here it's equal to await.res.json. And now all I have to do, I just need to return my user. So that's my API. Should be simple. Okay. Let me go to my component now. In app, I have nothing here. I just have this one. On main, I have just some styling here. So there's nothing. It just makes the background color, as you can see, black, and I'm using font Poppins. Other than that, on display is a box sizing as a bird box. So let's go to first to the header, which is the simplest component. All I have to do just HYF-BE, and I don't need the first import here. Props here, I am expecting to pass a prop which will be title, as you know, because now I'm trying to create the header. And of course, the title, it will be a string. So all I have to do, just title, it will be prop type.string dot is required. Is it required? Yes, it is. And now here, what I need to do, I don't want to return a div, I want to return a header. So header is HTML tag, of course. And now h1, and voila. And I can check now here my CSS, I have header and I have h1, so it should be fine. Now what I need to do, I need to import this component inside the app.jsx. So I'll go to the top here, and you can just say import header from header dot slash component slash header. And all I have to do now here, not sure if I need a div or not, but let's just keep it for now like that. And of course, I'm going to render my header here. So what is my header? I'm trying to get user. So here, maybe you can just pass get user like that. And actually, that's what I want. If I go now to my project, as you can see, voila, I have my get user. It looked like I forgot to import my CSS. So here I can just say import dot slash header dot CSS. Voila. And now, as you can see, I have my header, which is nice. Okay, I created my header. Of course, the loading part, as you can see, I'm not going to change anything in loading because simply it's not logical. It's just two divs, and after that, I style it. That's it. Okay, well, I will need this loading anyway, so I need to import this loading inside my user container because all my logic, it will go inside the user container. So what I can do here, I can just create my user container first. Voila. I don't need this import, and I don't need any props actually. Okay, so I don't need you. So first, I will need a component. I told you I need the loading, right? So I can just say import loading. What is the name of the component? It's called loading. Yeah, click. No. It looks like it doesn't work. Dot slash loading. Oh, no. Import loading from, and here you can just say dot slash component. What the hell? Why is not giving me any suggestion? It's not component actually. It will be just dot slash loading because both of them in the same folder, which is component. So I'm trying to import the loading inside the user container. So I don't really need a component, just dot slash. That's all I need. Well, that's okay. That's not bad. I will need a user here. Why? Because I will need to pass my data here to this user component. So user component, I have nothing here. So let's just create a dummy component. Voila. Same idea. I need to get rid of this one. And I will receive some props, which will be user object. And yeah, for now, let's just pass our prop as user like that. That should be okay. I know the user has name, for example, so maybe I can just say, no, not dot object, maybe just say so dot name, for example, is required. No, but I need to say a prop type dot shape because it's an object. And now here inside the object, I can define different property, and here maybe I can define the name, for example. I need to define all the property, but for now, I'll just need name. Is required? Yes, it's required. So that's my component, and I need to use it here also inside user container. So let's import it here. Import user from user, and that's nice. So now here in the user container, I need to do some adjustment. So first, I will need some piece of state. So what do you think the first piece of state I will need? What do you think is the first piece of state I will need? I'm listening. I will try to send a request to get the user data, right? So it's all
It's user,
yes,
user set user.
indeed. So I need user set user, and here, as you can see, I need to import use state, which I don't have yet. I need to import it as a top. So import use state, and I will need useEffect anyway because I need to send a request to the backend. So let me import it anyway. useEffect. Voila. So now, as you can see, I have user and I have set user, and I'm using the state here. I am passing null. And the question now, of course, if I go to my data, I am trying to grab the users. Let me go to JSON placeholder, JSON placeholder. Of course, as you know, JSON placeholder is just a fake API. We use it a lot of times. So if I click on this one and I go to /1, it will give me user with ID 1. And of course, the data here, it will be an object, as you can see. And now my question for you here, well, actually, I can ask them later. So first, I need the user. And the second one here, also, I will need the ID. Why do I need the ID? Well, because depending on the ID, I need to send the request to the backend to get the user with this specific ID. And I need to render my component, because each time I send a request to get a different user, I need to re-render my component. So I need another piece of state, which will be const ID and also set ID. Set ID here, of course, by default, I want the ID, my ID, it will be 1 because I'm trying to get a user with ID 1. I will also need the loading. So loading, set loading. So by default, the loading, it will be true. Why? So when I send a request, I will have this loader. And whenever I get my data, I should disable this loader. And how can I disable this loader? Well, all I have to do is just make this one false. So currently,
Samir, can I interrupt you? Sorry. On the line 8, we have state number 1. But in case if we will use UUID, it's random ID. In this case, what will be like a default use state?
you mean here?
Yes, on the line 8, yeah, how to explain? So now we have fake data, fake API, but if we will use UUID, it will generate us random ID. In this case, what ID will be default?
First, it's not random ID, it's unique ID. Okay?
Yes, unique.
We give you a unique ID. So all you have to do, you need to go to your database, you need to go to the backend, and in the backend,
the MS Teams user can be the agent.
so you need to go to the backend and try to find which user want to show us by default. So you need to decide which user you want, and after that you need to know which ID, and you can grab the ID, and here you can see the ID by
Teams.
Okay, just a random number, just pick one.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So now I'm a user, I have my ID, I have my loading. Also, I need another piece of state, which will be the error. That means when I'm trying to send a request to the backend and I got an error, so I will need const error set error set error. Of course, here now by default, I will not have an error, so here it will be false. And when I encounter an error here, I can make now this error as true, and then it will show me my error. Okay, that's not bad. Now let's try to show our component here. Of course, I need to valid JavaScript like that. So I will need to pass a valid JavaScript, and of course, that's not valid JavaScript. My valid JavaScript should be like that. So as a first step here, I need to show the loading at the top. Here, it doesn't matter really a lot, but I need to show the loading at the top. So how can I show the loading? So all I have to do, remember, the loading here is a Boolean. So all I can do here, I can just say loading and ampersand to ampersand, and here I can show my loading. So what does that supposed to mean? Well, that means if the loading here is true, then it will show me my loading component. And that's simply how it is. But if it's false, then it will not show my loading. Okay, that's the first one. I need to pass some other data here. So let me click on this one. Let me click on this one. So that was the loading first. Of course, the user, it will be the same idea. And now here I can put the second one here. I can just say user. That means when I have a user, I want to show the user component. And as you can see, I am using my user component and I am passing the user object, which I will receive not now when I send a request to the backend. Currently here, my data is null. Okay, so I'm showing my user, of course, if my user is true. So what the hell is going on here? Unexpected parsing, just ignore that. Yeah, that should be fine. Okay, now also I need to show the error. So if I have an error and my error also, it will be a Boolean. So when I have an error, I want to show a div with ID error. But what the hell is going on here? Well, I can maybe make different statement like that. I don't have to handle these errors. So let me put this one alone. So let me put this one alone as well. In different statement, and like that, I don't have any error. Let me put this one again here. And now here, I need to get rid of this one. And I need to get rid of this one. Voila. So now I have different statement, and all of those are rendered conditionally. If you remember, what do I mean by conditionally? Well, that means if this part is true, then it will show me the loading. But if it's false, it will not show me. Here, if the user is true, I know the user here is an object, but also if you think of it in terms of true and false, we studied that before. So we will try to convert the object to see if it's true or false. If it's true, it will show me the user component, and it will pass the props, which will be users here, as you can see, an object. And if I go to the user component, I'm receiving my prop user object. Okay, fine. I have loading, that's good. I have the user, I have the error. What else do I need to show? I think for now, that's all I need. Also, maybe I need 2 buttons actually. Why do I need 2 buttons? Well, simply because I need to, I will try to click on next and previous to show the different, these 2 buttons. So here I can just create a button like that. And this button here, I can just, the first one here, it will be on the left. So maybe I can just add this one to previous. It's just HTML, is nothing biggie. And the second one here, it will be next. And of course, now I need to add an event listener to both of them. That when I click on the button, I need to somehow do something. So I will need an on click, as you know. Voila. And when I click, I need to execute this function. Let's say, let's name it click handler, for example. Click handler, which I don't have, of course. I can add a function here as well, on click. And I can pass the same function, click handler. Click handler. Of course, I don't have click handler. So let's go here. Let's create it here. Click handler, which will be a function. And of course, I need to add a const here. Voila. So const, that's my function here. Nice. So what do I want to do? Well, for now, I'm not going to do anything. Let me complete my, my code. And after that, I will come to the functionality of the button. Now, my question for you here. Now here, the ID, we know we want to get the user with ID 1. That's why we set it to 1. Loading and set loading is just a Boolean. Error and set error is just a Boolean as well. So these are true or false. That's simple. Now, my question here is why I did not put the user as an empty object, because as you know, if I go to the user here, user data, I have an object. So why the default state here is not an empty object? Why I put null? Is that correct? Is it true or false? Which one I should use? Yeah. It's a simple question. In user, my user normally it will be an object. The default value should be an empty object. Why in the first time I use my code, I did not use an empty object like that and I used null? What's the reason?
Null is also an object.
Customer can move from
Sorry?
basic to experience.
Null is also an
But
object.
if they want both, yes, they can
Null
have
is,
both.
yeah, type of null is an object, yes.
And
But, okay, if both of them are objects, then why I don't use like that an empty object?
if you're looking to migrate everything, I think
Can I use it this way, an empty object?
they basically move to
Yes.
Are you sure?
No.
Of course, I cannot use y. Let me go to my JavaScript. If you remember the truthy and falsy, if I say Boolean, and Boolean gave me a truthy and falsy, and I try now to convert to truthy and falsy an empty object. If I pass it here, the empty object is true. That means even if I don't have the data, it will render my user component here. Because this value here, it will be truthy. It's empty object, it's truthy in JavaScript. So this one here, it will be true. And it will render my component user, although I don't have the data. And that's wrong. That's not what I should do. That's the reason why I am using null, because if I convert null to null is truthy or falsy, is null is truthy or falsy?
So in every situation when we want to receive data from backend, we need to use null instead of object, right?
Yes, because simply the empty object is it's related to JavaScript. Now in Python it's different because the object in Python are
that's very important.
falsy, they're not.
Here.
In JavaScript, empty array and empty object, as you can see, empty object and empty array, both of them actually they should be falsy, but in JavaScript, as you can see, they are truthy. Because they are truthy here, if I pass them, even if they are empty, it will be truthy and they will show me my user. And that's actually is not what I want to, because now I will have no data. So to prevent this one, I will use null. Why? Because null is falsy values. That means the user here, it will be false and it will not show me my user unless I change this user state. Is the idea clear?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Now, what I need to do here, I need now to send a request to the backend to get my data. Well, of course, to do that here, I need to use a hook. Can anyone remind me which hook I need to use? Which hook I need to use?
useEffect.
Of course, useEffect. And now for now, I'm going to pass my array of dependency. Okay, now here, can I make this function a sync function? Can I make this function a sync function?
No.
I am not allowed to do so. Okay. So here now what I can do, I can just create a function. Maybe I can name it fetch user. It will be an it will be an async function. Now what I can do, I need to call my function directly. Otherwise it will not be executed. And now all I have to do, I can import my API here. And let's put it maybe here. I can just say import. It was get user, if I'm not mistaken, get user from /API get user, and that's what I want to actually, because I want to get out from the component, go inside the API and get user here. Of course, I told you if the extension is JS or JSX and React, I don't need them because by default React assumes the extension is JS or JSX. But if it's another extension, I will need it, of course. Let me import my CSS as well so I don't forget /, voila. So that should be nice. Now let's try to use our API. Okay, it should be simple. All I have to do, I can just say now const user or user data, whatever you want to. It will be a way to get user. And as you can see, I need to pass the ID. Why? Because I mean, I want to get the user with ID 1. All the time when I'm trying to send a request to the backend, I need to pass an ID. Well, that's what I'm getting actually. That's nice. Of course, whenever I'm getting my data here, I can now, actually, maybe what I can do, I can actually use try and catch here, maybe. Try and catch here. I mean, why not? So here, what I can see, let me just get rid of this one. Here is try, and then I will need a catch. You don't have to use try and catch, of course, but for me, I'm going to use it here. Let's say in case I have an error like that. And maybe if you don't remember, actually, now try and catch normally come with another block. Can anyone tell me what is this block? So normally it's not just try and catch. I can add another thing, try and catch, and there's something else. What do we call it?
Finally,
Yes, indeed, finally. So finally, what's the difference between the two? Well, try, it will try to execute my code, and if if I got any error, it will go to the catch block. So it's simple. Is a try, it will be executed, or catch, it will be executed. But what is finally? Well, finally, that means if my code executed in the correctly without any errors, that means it was in the try block, then it will come to finally, and everything in finally it will be executed. Even if I get the error, also everything in finally it will be executed. So everything you need to remember, everything in finally it will be executed no matter what, if you have an error or if you don't have an error. All the time, the code inside finally, it will be executed. Again, no matter if I have an error or I don't have an error. Okay? Yes? Fine, now try what I'm trying to do. Well, I try to get the user data. So I can just say const user data. You can name it user if you want, it's fine. A way to get user. Now I'm getting my user data. Now I need to set my state. As you can see, I need to change my state. So what I can do here, I can just say set user, that's my new data. And of course, if I have an error, what I can do, see, I have my error here, as you can see. So here, when I have an error, I'm gonna set my error to true. Why? Well, simply because here, by default, I don't have an error. But if I go to the catch block, that means I have an error. So what I need to do here, I need to change the state of my error. And that's the reason why I'm saying set error to true. And that will be inside the catch block. That's fine. Now, finally, at the end, if I have an error or I don't have an error, I need to get rid of this loading. So as a loading, I'm sending a request to the backend. If I get my data or I get an error, I will get a result. So I will not need loading anymore. So what I can do here, and finally, I can just set this loading to false, and voila, that's what I want. Again, in the try block, I'm trying to use my API. Of course, I need an async function because my API all the time return a promise. So I just put it inside try block. Const user data is equal to await get user, and I'm passing the ID. By default, the ID, it will be 1. If I get my data, all I have to do is I say set user, it's equal to user data. So I'm just updating this user here. Well, what if I get an error? Well, I get an error. Now here I need to update this error state. So set error to true. By default, it's false. And finally, I told you it will be executed no matter what. Even if I encounter error or not, well, all the time when I send a request to the backend, after a while, I should get rid of the loading. Because either I'm going to get my data or I will get an error. And in both cases, I don't need the loading anymore. And that's simply my code. Now I have
Samir, sorry. Why we don't need to throw a new error with error status?
Because when I get an error in my API, as you can see, I'm already throwing an error. I am throwing an error. But here in my component, I don't want to throw an error. Just if it go to the catch block, that means I have an error. All I have to do, or all I want to do, I want to set my error to true because I want to show this error here. Okay? I don't need to do anything because in my API, I'm already throwing an error. Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Of course, finally, as I told you, I need to get rid of this loading because I don't want this loading. Now, this function here, I want it to be executed when? Can anyone tell me when I want this function? So I want this function all the time, this function. I want to send the request to the backend to get a user with a specific ID. Each time one piece of state changes, I want to send this request again and again and again. Can anyone tell me what is this piece of state? So there is one piece of state from this for. If it's changed, I need to send a request again to the backend. Can anyone tell me what is this? I don't need to think about it. It's simple. Which one? It's not loading, it's not error, it's not user, that means ID. So all I have to do, I just need to add my ID into the array of dependency. Voila. What's that supposed to mean? Well, what's it supposed to mean here? I'm telling this user effect, okay, each time the ID changes, I want you to send the request to the backend with the new ID, of course. And that's what I want to. So now here, as you can see, the array of dependency, if it's empty, that means it will only send a request when that page refresh. So in the beginning, but now I am passing my ID. That means each time my ID changes, this code here, it will be executed. And that's what I want to. Why? Because each time I change the ID, I say first it was user with ID 1. If I click on next, the ID will change. It will be user with ID 2. So I need to send another request to get a new user with ID 2. Otherwise, I will not have a new data, and so on and so on and so on. Is the idea clear here? Yes, no?
Yes.
Okay, now here, so far I did not do anything in this click handler. So what should I do? Well, in click handler, well, we'll have two possibilities actually. Maybe here I can just pass, and because I need to pass some stuff here. I can just say E. Voila. And here I need to call E. Well, actually, I don't need E. So here, as you can see, I am just executing my function. Why? Because I need to pass a parameter. So what the hell is the parameter I need? Well, I want when the user click on this button, which is previous, I want to send a text which is previous, so I know which button the user click on. So I'm gonna send just this string. Okay, if the user click on the next button, I want to send this guy here next, so I know which one I'm sending. So now, if the user click on this button, which is previous, I will receive this string here inside this function here. And maybe I can just name it, I give it a name. Of course, if it's next, I will receive it. If it's previous, I'm gonna receive it. And here, maybe I can give it a name. What good naming it will be? Yes, what good naming it will be? Maybe I can name it change. Yeah. Now here, all I have to do, I can just say if change now. If change is previous, so what should I do? Well, I need to set the ID here. Now the new ID, it depends on the old ID, as I told you. So I'm gonna set my ID here, as you can see. I will grab the previous ID and I say previous ID -1. But what if it's not previous, it's next? If it's next, I'm gonna set my ID. I will take the previous ID and I will add 1 to it. And that should be simple, I suppose.
Yeah, Samir, again, if we use UUID with unique ID number, what we will do in this case? It's not possible to use a priv ID -1 or priv ID +1.
No, it will not be possible, but when we are using UUID, all the time you need to know what's the ID. So all the time I need to know what's the ID. Okay. Don't worry, because when we are using UUID in a real project, I will have all, I need to switch or I need to fetch all users, and then I can define which user receives specific ID I want, then I will send a request. Okay.
Okay.
But for now here, I know that my user is their ID, it's between 1 and 10. That's the reason why I'm using this code, because I already know. Fine, this one should be simple here, click handler. So click handler simply, as you can see, if it's previous, well, if the previous, then I need to make the ID or set the ID to -1. And I told you whenever the new state depends on the old set, it's best practice to pass a function. And this function here, it will have a previous ID by default. So I want the previous ID -1. And the opposite is true. And now here, as you can see, we are updating our ID. Now, each time the user click on this button, the ID will be changed. And because the ID, it will be changed, as you can see here, my ID will be changed. I will send another request to get a new data. And that's what I want to actually. Okay, fine. Maybe I can now import this user container to my app.jsx and see what I have so far. So let's try to import it. It was import. I named it user containers. User container. And now here, all I have to do, I need to render my user container like that. Should be simple. It looks like I have a problem. Failed to resolve import in which one is user container. So let's go to user container here. That's my user container. And I'm trying to grab this one, get import get user. Yes, it is get user. Let me go back, import get user from // and I should go out, then /, yes, actually.
It should be APIs, not API with S.
You're right, actually. You are right. I don't need that thing. Okay, it is APIs. Oh, that's fine. That's not bad. So as you can see now, I have my user. Of course, now this user component, but now I'm not rendering anything in my user component. And to convince you it's component, I can just go to my my React DevTools, and that's my user component. As you can see, I have my data here, voila, which will be the current user with ID 1. And yeah, I have my header, I have my user container, I have my user. Now I need to render my data here. Of course, as you can see, by default, I'm sending a request. So whenever my page refreshes, I send a request to get a user with ID 1. Of course, why? Because the default value for ID is 1. Now, notice something. If I click on next, it will send a request to get the user with ID 2. If I say next again, voila, 4, 5, it will increase it, it will increase it, it will increase it, 10, 11. And now I have a problem here, actually. As you can see, I wanted to be able to send a request until the ID is 10. If I exit 10, I want to make this button disabled. And in the same case, also this one here, previous. So I want to be able to send a request until the ID is 1. If the ID is 1, I should disable this button. Why? Because if I did not disable it, it will send a request with ID 0. And of course, I know that there is no user with ID 0. So now I need to somehow to figure it out how to disable and enable the button. But of course, before that, I need to go to my user here and I try to render this component user. To be honest, here in the user, I just have I copy the component. I don't want to build everything from scratch. Why? Because it's just an object. I mean, an object, and I'm passing some property, so it's nothing really difficult. So I just saved it here. Yeah, that should be good. Let me copy it. Oh, no, copy. What was it? So let me go to this guy here. I'm going to just paste it. Why? Because as you can see, I don't want to repeat all of this stuff here. Then here, I need to add my prop type as well. So in prop type, I'm just going to copy paste them. Let me get rid of this one. Well, so that's simply my user component. As you can see, I want to render the name, the email, username, email, phone, website. Of course, I need to know how my data structure, so I will be able to access those. That should be okay, I think. Now, if I go to my guys here, refresh, and as you can see, well, it will give me my user one here. I'm not sure if I am importing the CSS, so let me try to import the CSS. Maybe it will be a little bit nicer. Voila. And now that's really nice, as you can see. That's good. Now here, I need to handle these two guys here. It's just the next and the previous. Why? Because simply, as I told you, I should allow the user to click next until the ID is 10. If the ID is 10, I should disable it. And for the previous as well, I should allow the user to click previous until the ID is 1. And then I need to disable it. So how can I fix this problem? Any idea? Any idea? Yeah. Not sure if this one has any, just a second. A container, yeah, I think it has a class called container. If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, I'm listening. Any idea? Yeah, but that's not what I want. Why my button is like that, so ugly? Not sure. Any idea here?
Samir, you
Yes.
added here dot, line number 39.
Line number 40?
39.
Yes.
You added dot in front of class name.
39.
You're
39.
right. You're right. You're right. But now, still they're ugly. But anyway, it looked like I'm missing some style. It's not a problem. Okay, so let's get the user. I have the user, which is good. Loading, I have it. Header, I'm passing everything. App.jsx, I'm not sure in the app, do I have any classes? Let's see. Nope. User here, it is container, and I don't have any classes anymore. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, and maybe I can name it user card here. Of course, that's, yeah, it's already there. That's just some HTML and CSS, so I'm quite sure you can handle those. Now let's come to the real problem. The real problem now is disabling and enabling my button. So can anyone tell me in React or even in vanilla JavaScript, how can we disable a button? So how can we disable a button?
Maybe you can create another class.
We have a property called disabled. Come on. So we have a property called disabled like that. So disabled here, I have this property, voila. And now here I need to pass either true or false. So if it's true, it will disable my button. If it's false, it will enable my button. Even in JavaScript, we have this property. That's fine. So now I need somehow to disable or enable this button. So what I can do? Well, I can create a new piece of state. And here I can just name it const. And here maybe I can name it, what should I name it? Any idea what should I name it? Maybe I can name it, pagination or something. Let's name it pagination. You can name it whatever you want to, by the way. So now by default, when I first go to my user number 1, when I refresh my page, should the next button be enabled or disabled? Again, if I go to here, and now it show me an error, of course, because I need to handle this stuff. But anyway, now if I refresh my page, now the next button, do you think it should be enabled or disabled?
Enable,
It should be enabled, and previous button, it should be?
disable.
Okay, so all I have to do now, I can just go to my previous state here, and I say previous, it should be, actually, it should be true. So it should be disabled, true. And next here, of course, it should be false. Why? Because I should not disable it. So if the value is true, it will disable it. If the value false, it will enable it. So now all I have to do now, I can go to my pagination, say pagination dot previous, and it will give me either true or false. Pagination, of course, now remember the pagination here, it will return me an object. So I say pagination dot next, pagination dot previous, and that should be okay. So let's take pagination dot, and I have either previous or not. So now my button is previous, voila, and here pagination dot. Pagination is an object again. Pagination dot next. And that's simply what I want to actually. That's all I want to. And now if I go here, as you can see, by default, my previous button is being disabled, which is nice. That's what I want to. And my next button is being enabled. But of course, now enabling and disabling the button, it will change depending on what? Again, the same question. So the enabling and disabling this two button, it will change depending on what? Can anyone tell me?
ID,
Exactly. So depending on the ID, each time I change the ID, I will need to update these two guys. Why? Because let's say I am changing the ID, and if the ID is 1, that means I need to disable the previous button. And of course, this one will be enabled. But if the ID, for example, is 10, I need to disable the next button, and I need to enable the previous button. Okay. So how can I do that? Well, I can do it actually in my useEffect here. Why? Because this function here, it will run each time I change what? Each time I change
ID,
the ID. So here I can come and I can put it here. Notice. So what do I want each time? Well, each time I need to set my pagination. So I say set pagination. this guy here, set pagination. Voila. And I need, of course, set pagination. I need to pass an object, as you know. And here, this object. Now, when I want my previous button to be disabled, so I'll say previous like that. When I want my previous button to be disabled, if the ID is
Equal to 1.
Greater
no,
than 1.
so if the ID
Yeah.
is less or equal to 1, less or equal. Why? Because each time the ID, if it's 1, I need to disable it, but if it's less than 1, also I need to disable it. Why? Because, I mean, it doesn't make sense. I don't have user with ID 0 or 1, -1 or -2. So this previous here, it will check this condition each time I change the ID. It will check if the ID is less or equal to 1, it will return me true or false. If it's true, it will disable my button. If not, it will enable my button. Now for next, it will be the same condition. If my next button is equal or greater than 10, I need to disable the button. Why? Because I don't have user with ID more than 10. And now that's simply how it is. Each time I change the ID, it will set my pagination here. This value, it will check this condition. If the ID is equal to 1 or less, it will disable it. And here for the next, it will check if the ID is equal to 10 or greater than 10, and it will disable it, or else it will enable it. And now here, let's go here, refresh. And now here, if I click next, notice next, of course, my data is changing, as you can see. I've sent the request to do, and now my button here has been enabled. Click, 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 click. And now notice why when my ID become 10, what will happen? You see, this one is disabled. And that's what I want to. Because each time I change the button, my my useEffect is being run, and it will change these two buttons. And here now, if I click previous, when I got to the ID 1, notice now it is being disabled. And that's what I want to write. Yes, no?
Yes, but
Yeah.
Samir, it would also work if you write it's equal to 1, because it will not go further, because like if you put like equal sign and not bigger or equal to 1, yeah, because if it's enabled to click again, so
right.
it doesn't matter, it will not go to -1, -2, and so on.
Let's try it.
Yeah,
Here, let's see, if it's equal to,
yeah.
strictly equal to 1, here strictly equal to 10. Let's see if that will work or not. That's what you say, right?
Yeah.
You say next. And here, if I say next.
It's also working.
Working as well, yeah.
Yeah.
It is working.
We cannot go to -1, -2, -3, and so on. No?
Yes, but for me, I prefer this condition. Again, I'm preferring this condition, which will when the ID is less or equal to 1, because it makes more sense for me. Of course, it's the same functionality, but this one make more sense for me. Okay, if you like it, you can use this just strictly equal to 1. Now, as you can see, these two code is running in my useEffect, right? This one and this one. Now, the question here is, are those two code are somehow related, connected, or they are not connected? So set pagination and useEffect, when I send a request to the backend, is it kind of connected? Are those is connected code or is not connected code?
You're connected?
How? This one here is related to the backend. This one is related to enable at the same button.
Yeah,
So
but previous.
belonging to the same category, right?
Mhm.
So in order to do that, what I can do, I can create another useEffect. And of course, this useEffect, it will do the same job exactly, same idea. So I need to get rid of this one. And now all I have to do, just take my code, cut it from here, and put it here. And of course, now you may tell me why I did that. Well, I can useEffect multiple times, just like you stated. As you can see, I'm using 4 times, 6 times. Now, sometimes I do that just to show that, okay, this code here is responsible on getting the user data from the backend. And this code is responsible for the pagination. So sometimes I can use this one to show that my code is being more separated in much of concern, because this one here is concerned with the button enable and disable. So it makes sense to put it here. And this one is responsible for sending a request to the backend to get the data. Is the idea clear? It's not wrong to put this code here, but for me, I prefer to separate them. You can have multiple use effect if you want to. And just to show that, okay, this one here is related to the backend and data, and this one is related to the pagination. Is the idea clear? And that's simply my project. Maybe what I can do, I'm not sure if there is a container for this button.
Samir,
Yes.
can you use instead of number index?
Just a second, Dinyando, I'll be with you. Yes, what was your question?
We are using manually number here 1 and 10, right?
Can you tell me which line?
Line number 37.
37, we are using
Yeah.
ID, yes.
Manual number we are using, right?
Yes.
But we are not using, for example, Daria says ki if there any UID in IDs,
Yes,
then
yes.
how we can handle? We can handle with index number.
So, Dinyando, in this case, no, it will not work. In this
Okay.
case, I am using this way because I know my ID between 1 and 10.
Yeah.
But if I'm using UUID, it will be a long string, unique string. It will not work. Okay. So
Yeah.
normally with UUID, I should normally all the time, actually, or most of the time, I send a request to get all the user. And after that, depending on the user, when I click on the user, I will send a request with the ID, which I will have, and I will get the data related to that user.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Is this code is clear? Let me see if the problem fixed. Yeah, the problem is fixed. Thanks, God. Yeah, but that's not what I want to. So now it's quite nice, I suppose. Yeah, not bad. Okay, so that's my code. Now you need to be careful with about something. I told you hooks. We have two rules for hooks. Rule number 1, we can use them inside functional component. And rule number 2, they must be at the top level. And as you can see, all my hooks here sit at the top level. Also, my use effect at the top level. So I cannot put them inside a function. I cannot put them inside condition or loops. All of them must be at the top level, as you can see. And here, that's my handler. I just put it here. Oh, no, simple. Here, I'm rendering those conditionally. So that means if the loading is true, it will show me loading. If it's not true, it will not show me. Same for user, same for error. At the bottom, it will show me the bottom all the time. The property to disable enable the bottom is called disabled. And here, if I pass true or false, if it's true, it will disable it. If it's false, it will enable it. And that's simply the rest here is super simple. It's just user object. And I need to pass them here. I need to validate them. So if you have, let's say here, now my user is an object, and inside it I have an address object. So how can I define my data? Well, you can just again use prop type.shape and define what different property you have. You can use it as much as you want to, it's fine. Other than that, nothing really biggie. So it's simple actually. Any question? Yeah. Question.
When will you upload this video?
Sorry.
When will you upload this video?
In the second half,
Okay.
I'm going to stop the recording.